Cinebois to Cinema, episode 76.
76.
Hope you're well, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. This week, return to our Hidden Gems
Yeah.
sort of mini-series.
Yeah.
That's running parallel alongside our...
Yeah, our regular content.
Yeah. So for those who caught our last Hidden Gems episode, we did the old draw from the Cruze pot, which will make appearance later on this episode.
Yep, not sponsorship. It's just the only bowl we had at the time.
The only one we had. Whether or not we would rule it out necessarily.
No, absolutely not. Get in touch. Yeah,
Cruze.
yeah.
We drew Big Trouble in Little China.
Yep, John Carpenter's.
Yep, from Jack, and the Raid 2 from Dale.
Yeah,
Both of which have provided a audio or visual sort of supplementary.
Oh, nice.
Kind of explanation of why they picked the film.
Yeah.
Not just sort of explaining their relationship with the film and why they picked it, but why they personally classified it as a hidden gem.
Yeah.
Which is interesting in itself, because we were talking about this a little bit beforehand, and it's kind of obvious when you think back to it now, but the idea of a hidden gem is so subjective, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And also, I think, because both of us did a film degree, we're going to be sort of partial to films that we might consider not to be hidden, but to the kind of broader... I'm not saying Jack and Dale aren't sort of well-versed in... the
unwashed masses.
Yeah. It's just like, it's difficult to sort of think of yourself as a kind of general audience member who just goes and watches films from time to time, because we're not that. We watch films all the time and kind of live and breathe them. So to sort of seek outside opinion, I think is like quite nice and interesting. I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say about them both.
Questing the cinematic void.
Okay, should we start with Big Trouble in Little China first?
Yep, definitely.
Nice one.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I've got Jack's voice message, which I'm assuming you will overlay.
Yes, I will. Yeah.
Sorry, just
do it properly. Otherwise, it will just be like...
Yeah. What
do you think of that, everyone?
Right, okay.
Hello, mate. I have picked Big Trouble in Little China as my hidden gem because I just think it is one of these fantastic movies that almost seems like a cult classic. It's just one of those movies where you can turn your back for 2 minutes, either, going to go get a drink or go to the bathroom, and you can come back and the movie is completely changed already. And it's almost like you can completely lose the plot of the movie unless you're paying attention to it. But I quite like that, because at the same time, you can almost just dip in and out of it. It's just so zany, the fact that it follows this couple that go to the underworld fighting a sorcerer in sort of in like the 1980s China, and just aesthetically that's so beautiful as well. And so I love this movie. I have actually only been told or shown this movie by one person about 15 years ago, but since then I have shown it to a range of people. And it's always just been good times, It's been a movie that we can just stick on. We'll open up a couple of beers and we'll sort of have a laugh through it and have a chat. And I've loved it. But everyone who I've shown it to hasn't really heard of it before. And so that's why I sort of think that it's a hidden gem. I mean, it definitely is more popular than what I believe it to be, because it was released to cinema. And I've just checked on IMDb and it's got like a 7.2 or a 7.6 rating. So it's definitely a popular movie, but it's just not one that my circle of friends and people that I interact with seem to be that familiar with. But on top of that, John Carpenter and Kurt Russell are just an incredible duo, and I just love the work that they put out. I think that Kurt Russell is so perfect for the role of the lead actor in Big Trouble in Little China, as this rough and ready trucker. But I love the other stuff that they do. Like The Thing, famously, is one of their best pieces, in my opinion. I love it. The people that I've shown it to have loved it. it just seems to not be spoken about that much, though. I mean, the aesthetics is amazing, the storyline is zany, the casting is perfect, and I just don't think it's spoken about enough.
Oh,
Nice. Thank you, Jack. That was really nice.
bit long-winded.
2 minutes 41. No, that's really appreciated. And yeah, and interesting what you were saying about how nobody has heard of it. There's a kind of, there must be sort of large swathes of people, which, I mean, that might be down to time. Some people just aren't as keen on films from that era because there's a sort of preconceived notion that they're dated or kind of have rubbish special effects or something. I don't know. It's easy to. I mean, I have those kind of thoughts when I watch films from the 50s. I'm like, it's so far removed from like my usual experience of watching a film that it can, be slightly off-putting unless I'm in the right mood. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of definitely take your point in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, particularly in the context of films from the 80s. I think there's this kind of idea that people think they've figured those films out when they go, oh, it's cheesy.
Yeah.
So they kind of disregard the films on that basis. I've noticed a lot of people do that with 80s films, particularly 80s action films, which you could argue Big Trouble in Little China mostly is.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Kind of homage to sort of kung fu.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah. No, I just think it's interesting that of that particular era that there's sort of, so much reverence for it, but there's also a lot of people think that they've sussed it because it's cheesy, and it's like
you're throwing a blanket over them.
It's a very simplistic kind of approach to that sort of viewing the culture of that time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Big Trouble in Little China is sort of subversive, I should say, in quite a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It kind of subverts the damsel in distress, right? Kim Cattrall's in it.
Yeah.
An actor who's previously been on this podcast, but
for wrong reasons.
For wrong reasons.
Yeah. It's good to actually get that right.
Yes, yeah. She's sort of all right on her own, and that's sort of the joke. I always think that this kind of American action hero is like out to save her, but she does just fine without him.
Yeah.
And there's also the subversion of the kind of American action hero, and that they're the kind of usual tropes that he's a bit of a buffoon, I think.
Yeah.
Kurt Russell's character.
He dresses and looks the part. As Jack says, he does look the part.
Yeah.
And that's why the joke works so well, and why the sort of subversive elements of the film work so well.
Yeah, like he knocks himself out right at the beginning of the first, the final battle, I should say. Yeah, like he just sort of shoots the ceiling. Kind of gun ho way.
Yeah.
Things just collapse on him. It's really funny.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to love in this film, and there's a lot that I feel like a lot of 80s action cinema didn't do, and it kind of, not that there's anything wrong with that. Like sort of more, I'm thinking more like Commando. I know Arnie's Austrian, but he kind of embodies the American ideal, right? And
of course, as an immigrant, I think that's something he beat the drum of a lot, wasn't it? He was saying that he came to this country a nobody and became a somebody.
Exactly,
which is the whole American dream, right?
That's it. Yeah. Went out there looking for gold and found it. But in this case, he's sort of arrogant, but in a kind of buffoonish way. Not Arnie, he's not in this. Kurt Russell. And I love it for that, and I really think that is what makes it so watchable. Outside of the fact that it contains quite a lot of quite well choreographed fight scenes, and is clearly a big homage to sort of the sort of Eastern sensibilities in terms of the choreography and stuff like that. I watched it quite recently.
Yes,
and it holds up. And Disney Plus have a really good transfer of it, so it looks really good.
It's a beautifully going back to what Jack was saying. It's a beautifully shot and crafted film. Yeah,
the visual effects hold up as well. They really hold up. There's there's a lot of comps in it, a lot of mats, and they really work. They don't always in 80s action films, but they took a lot of care. They clearly took a lot of care into sort of crafting it properly, despite the fact it's kind of at a surface level, it wouldn't be you wouldn't think of it as a film to be taken that seriously. But all of the comping and all the visual effects and stuff is really, really well done, even by today's standards. Quite a lot of it holds up today. Like, the cheesy lightning effects is very typical of the time.
But
it's done really well. Like,
it looks great. Yeah.
I had a real blast watching it, actually. Revisiting it, so it's been a long time since I've seen it. So, yeah, really, really, really positive experience. Yeah, what do you think?
I completely agree with you. I think the sort of satirical elements of the film are one of its great strengths, particularly the way it sort of utilises the kind of aesthetic of Eastern martial arts cinema.
Yeah.
As a kind of, I guess, a kind of satirical device to poke fun at the way American culture is built atop of many different cultures, and yet they kind of cherry pick the elements that they like best.
Yeah.
And kind of remold it to suit a kind of very American ideal.
Yes, yeah.
And I think it's interesting that the film, because the film is set in kind of like a Chinatown sort of space, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's San Francisco.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
But it's almost, they construct it like there's a surface level Chinatown, and then there's like an underbelly.
Subterranean.
Sort of like 6 levels of it. Which is very funny. And also kind of leads into the raid a little bit, which is similarly constructed. The first one, I mean.
Yeah.
But anyway, they do sort of make out like there's a kind of a China presented to America, but then the real China, right? The kind of underbelly, and there's all this sort of mysticism and wizards and stuff. And like, I mean, you could argue that it perhaps might be seen as slightly insensitive talking from 2025 standards, but you feel there's a lot of love for that culture.
I think so, and on all of the jokes are pointed squarely at Kurt Russell. When we sort of in the opening of this discussion, we talked about the idea of the kind of what the 80s means to a lot of people looking back on it, and particularly in terms of visual culture. One of the common criticisms is that it is cheesy and it's bombastic and it's unsubtle, which is very much the bread and butter of a lot of mainstream action films of that era. And I think that, in the context of Big Trouble, Big Trouble, Little China, is that he sort of embodies that. He embodies that kind of ideal. The kind of like quite grisly, fairly muscular. I mean, he's not as big as some of the action heroes of the time by any means, but he's definitely, there's a sort of everyman gruffness to him, which I think also works and is also used in a kind of satirical manner. But he does embody that kind of like the kind of rough American fantasy, there's something kind of like almost cowboy-esque about him in many ways as well, which again is another cultural staple of the United States, an enduring cultural staple that perhaps not as popular in the 1980s. I think certainly is a part of this kind of idea of the American leading man, and the kind of the Western and the cowboy is foundational to the 80s action hero in many ways, in the way in which the kind of the body is presented or the ideals are presented, and there's a very kind of like set sort of moral parameters around the character, and that no one's supposed to even attempt to challenge, because to challenge that would be to kind of side with the villain, you know. And I think all of that is sort of brought into question, and it's so masterfully played by Kurt Russell, who kind of, he does play this kind of grunt, but he does have a kind of like a softer side to him.
Yeah, but he's quite aloof about it. Like, he keeps saying, there's bits in the film where he keeps saying, "I just want my truck back." And he doesn't. He wants to sort of be with Kim Cattrall's character. And you can kind of tell that he does like sort of fancy her, but he doesn't want to like give it away. He's like, "I'm just here to get my truck back. I don't care about all this." And then, but you can tell that because he's so sort of like ham-fisted in the way he says it. You can tell that he's just lying. And it's really funny to watch that, and he plays that really well. It's not easy to kind of portray that in a way that embraces the satire, and he does it really well. I think I really enjoyed his performance in this, actually. Probably one of the best alongside The Thing, I think. I mean, he's been in some great films, but there's something really charming about him in this.
There's something, it really kind of embodies that kind of fun side of Carpenter's filmography, or the fun side of him as just a filmmaker generally. And I think even it is kind of like, even at his most sort of straight-laced, more sort of horror films, there is a kind of real playfulness. And I think it's just a full descent into that element, which is kind of like existed throughout his whole filmography, really. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he does just sort of wants to have a lot of fun with it, and also. It's funny what you're saying about the cowboy thing, 'cause I'm fairly sure an early draft of the screenplay, he wasn't trying to get a truck back, he was trying to get his horse back.
Right, okay.
I'm actually fairly sure I read that was like an early version of the screenplay.
Right.
I think for budgetary reasons, they set it in the present, or the present in 1980, whatever, 84, I think.
Okay.
84, 87? One of those. Probably going to be
Or neither.
neither. Yeah. I really like John Carpenter's ability to work in genre, because you get filmmakers which, like Tim Burton, right? Or like even Wes Anderson, who are so kind of narrow, that their focus is so narrow to their own style that they don't do much for the genre as a whole. I think they're quite insular about it. But John Carpenter's to me, John Carpenter's like the opposite of that. He's like, he embraces genre and he embraces tropes, but he does it so well, and he adds an element of prestige to what otherwise could have been a completely forgotten remake in the case of The Thing, or in this case just a kind of stupid action kind of ode to kung fu kind of thing, and he gives it a real sort of quality which makes them last. To the point where I was watching it on, Disney Plus is a really odd place to watch Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
But it felt like it belonged there, in the sense that the aesthetics married up with a lot of films that are shown on there today, which, shot on cameras which are vastly superior in terms of, technically speaking anyway, if we're not thinking in terms of nostalgia. I just think that about John Carpenter. I think that he's wonderful at embracing the genre he's working in. And
keeps things lean as well, doesn't he? I think he's quite sort of light on plot.
Yes,
there is a kind of you are sort of submerged more in atmosphere,
totally,
and a kind of like and this what plot there exists. I mean, obviously, all plot exists to move forward, but in a John Carpenter film, it's very much more propulsive, quick.
Yeah,
you don't spend long, sort of like mulling over the crumbs of exposition that you've been given, it moves forward very quickly. And in the case of this film, it's very much the same, very much in this sort of similar spirit to kind of like the Shaw Brothers martial arts films of the time.
Oh, right, okay.
They're quite sort of lean on exposition. The exposition dump tends to come at the start, and it's kind of like an echoey kind of like, in the land of this is happening, and there's three princes and, all that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
It feels in that way, and in so many ways, such an effective homage, but with so much reverence as well. Like, there's no, like we said earlier, the joke is at the expense of the kind of
the gruff American.
And the kind of and to extend further from that, the kind of people that idealize that archetype, which became so emblematic of that kind of hard-bodied Reaganism of the 1980s, that kind of expression of American strength. And the way that it kind of borrows from culture, I just think there's something so interesting about that.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a, like you say, there's that sort of surface level exploration of these cultures, and it's always kind of like remolded to sort of suit this kind of like grand American narrative,
Totally,
that every other country is just supposed to sit back and just watch and be in awe of, And it speaks to Carpenter's sort of maverick sensibilities as a filmmaker, because this is someone that's, he didn't have the best relationship with Hollywood.
No, this was his last studio film.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, like, he's someone that, he's kind of dismayed by the way the studio system, particularly in the 80s and 90s, kind of views sort of mainstream filmmaking as a kind of, very much in a kind of similar vein to now in terms of franchises and, and those things are kind of, do have an impact on creativity, because you have to then suddenly bend the knee to the kind of decisions that are made more with a mind to kind of like long-term monetization opportunities, as franchises tend to aim for, and that doesn't necessarily mean you can't get great films from great, within those franchises. But I think I've always kind of like admired him for that.
Yeah, you're watching a singular vision. And also, like, I mean, I don't mean that he's an auteur necessarily, because I think he's intensely collaborative, and he clearly employs a really, really talented DP. He does his own music, and I like that about him.
So good.
Really good. Really, and they really holds up as well. There's like
he's probably one of the greatest sort of, some of the scores he's produced are so emblematic of that era.
Yeah.
Not
afraid to use a synthesizer, right?
No.
An early user of it in terms of film score, I think. Anyway. I mean, don't Don't look it up.
As always. Don't.
It does feel kind of John Carpenter-y, though, when you hear a sort of synth.
Well, there's a reason, everyone. If you think about like the score for
Stranger Things.
Well, yeah, Stranger Things. I'm also thinking the film with Michael Monroe and the invisible monster that It Follows.
It Follows.
I was about to say the monster that follows you everywhere.
That would have been a good title.
So many of the kind of score work done by kind of these revisionist horror movies is so indebted to Carpenter's work in that area. Like, if you like, there's a reason why he plays his scores live. Like he goes on, he takes his scores on tour. There isn't many sort of composers that do that, bar maybe Hans Zimmer.
Yeah, Zimmer does it, doesn't he? But
there's something about the way Zimmer does it that just doesn't appeal to me whatsoever.
It's a bit operatic.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what
showing up with his piano. Like, love that idea. I mean, I'd take that over Hans Zimmer. Not that there's anything wrong with Hans Zimmer's music.
No, there is. This is an anti-Hans Zimmer podcast. I've said this loads of times.
Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, no, hey, fuck you.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the score for Batman Begins is shit.
No, it isn't. Thelma and Louise. It was all right, to be fair.
Yeah.
Try and make more memorable next time, Hans.
I do think with him, this is a sort of really bizarre aside.
It's okay. Yeah.
He is obviously good at what he does, but his scores are kind of. I can't think of many scores he's done that I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, Gladiator.
He's a steady pair of hands,
but then there's a kind of nostalgic element to that. He is a steady pair of hands, and he's done good work. But yeah, he's sort of like he doesn't. It's the equivalent of hearing a song too often in the shops on the radio. You know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. It's just like, another Hans Zimmer's soundtrack. Kind of thing. Yeah. I'm with you on that one for sure. Whereas not with Carpenter.
No.
I want to rewatch The Thing now. I really want to rewatch that because, I mean, again, it goes back to speaking about him being collaborative, like Rick Baker and his work on that.
Yeah,
worked so well with John Carpenter's sensibilities. Hidden Gem, I think it's funny because Alfie's a big fan of Big Trouble in Little China, so he talked about it quite a lot at university, and I kind of assumed, based on that it was quite well known. But it didn't do very well at the box office initially. It was a bit of, kind of tanked.
Do you think the satirical element's what tanked it?
Yeah, I also think it's hard to market. Because you market it and it immediately looks like a kid's film because of the sort of like wacky sensibilities. It's not a kid's film. There's a lot of mature content in it. But
there's a kind of exuberance to it in kind of like its assembly and its aesthetic that could be kind of, a kind of a quick glance could be sort of misread as something that's a bit more juvenile.
Yes,
than its
definitely.
Themes. Actually are.
Wouldn't put it past a marketing team to get it massively wrong.
Oh yeah, fucking yeah.
And so, it didn't do very well. I think that, and John Carpenter never worked with a studio ever again for that reason. He continued to make films. Obviously, I think the film he made after this was independently financed, Prince of Darkness, and then They Live.
Right,
I love They Live.
Yeah, it's great.
So good. I've not actually seen Prince of Darkness, but.
I have, but it was a long time ago.
Yeah, memorable, particularly. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Not always a hit with Carpenter.
No, not off. Yeah, it's strange with him. I think obviously the hits far outweigh the few duds that he has.
Yeah. Halloween, obviously.
Yeah. Well, it's his first film, right? His kind of break into Hollywood that cemented him as a kind of voice for horror filmmaking, right?
Totally.
And The Thing, obviously, more than sort of was the cherry on the top, I guess, in terms of the way Hollywood viewed him. But no, I guess that's the kind of thing, when you work independently, away from the studio system, it's trickier.
Yeah.
And even They Live's a great fucking movie.
Yeah.
But, it's a bit rougher.
Big time. I like that about it.
And I love, same.
Yeah, but it is,
I'm not sort of poo-pooing working outside of the studio system. I actually hugely admire him for doing that.
But there's not a kind of sheen to it.
Well, that's kind of what he's fighting against in the film, really.
I suppose, yeah. It's funny how you see. Well, you don't see them anymore, but you remember those caps that said "Obey" on them.
There's
a reference to it. That's like what you were saying about Barbie and like how it's sort of weirdly contradictory. There's all these products out there that literally are sold on the basis of being anti-capitalist.
Yeah, and it's funny because we would have probably interacted with that before we'd seen the film, right? Because Obey was quite big when I was a teenager.
Yeah, I remember watching They Live and I thought, oh, that's where that's from.
Yeah.
Which obviously should have been the other way around, but that's what happens when you're born in the 90s, I suppose.
Yeah. I find the idea of it being considered a hidden gem interesting because, like you know, obviously, again, this goes back to what you were saying earlier. That obviously, when we studied film, we were around people that all studied film. So, like, obviously, they would talk about movies and it would feel as if they were kind of well known.
Yeah.
Whereas it might not necessarily be the case in other circles of people of different interests or whatever. So
you put it a lot more eloquently than I did.
No. You're right though. You're right to point that out, and I think it's an interesting point to take. But I can see why. I think, given what we've said about the kind of the nature of the film, how it can be kind of like almost quickly disregarded if marketed poorly, which it wasn't probably, I assume so anyway, in the 80s. But even now, it's probably quite a hard sell for a lot of people. However, I wonder if the kind of like obsession with the 80s, spearheaded by things like Stranger Things, gave sort of Carpenter's work a new lease of life.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, The Thing didn't do that well either.
No.
And it's a retroactive reaction to his work a lot of the time.
Well, that happens to a lot of great filmmakers, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I mean, The Shining wasn't particularly; it was sort of mixed, a bit placid at the time.
2001 was almost a complete failure, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's weird that.
And now we look at those films with such reverence. I do think it boils down to, when you think about Carpenter, is that the Thing. Obviously, the plot is pretty sparse. It's a work of atmosphere.
Oh man, I mean, it's aided by the sort of the landscape itself.
Yeah, 100%.
In stark contrast to Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a lot more sort of narratively sparse, and there's a lot more room for that kind of atmosphere, which Carpenter is so goddamn good at doing, to kind of like just kind of completely enrapture you. And I guess that might be part of the reason why he was kind of at odds with the studio system in this kind of in the way that he constructed his films.
Yeah.
I think, a lot of kind of studio heads don't have time for atmosphere. They want things to move, go. How are you going to introduce this character that's going to guarantee the 6 more films, or all that kind of stuff? And that's something that Carpenter was very much against then. It's sort of like his battle against the studio system is almost, there's a kind of a prophetic quality to it.
Oh yeah.
Not to sort of lick his ass too much, but you know what I mean? Like, I do think there's something in that.
Yeah. Did he make Halloween 2? Was that him?
I don't think so.
Did he, I know he made one sequel, which was Escape from LA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm fairly sure he didn't have a great time making that either. Or, I mean, maybe I'm not reading into the subtext of it too much. Maybe it was a critical look at the sort of the sequel potentially. I don't know, but you can tell that his attitude towards Hollywood and his sort of vision in a lot of his films shines through beautifully. I always admire him for that, and I always admire him for, like I said, not making his style oppressive.
No,
and making it fit into the mold of the time. Not resisting it, but at the same time having a charm which makes them last. That's what I just love about him.
There's a real artistry to his films that I think a lot of people in that period of the 80s and everything, there is a kind of kitschness to the 80s that a lot of people have assume, right?
Yeah.
But there's such artistry in his work.
Yeah, there is.
And it really shines. I mean, we talk about Kubrick and stuff. I know that, he's probably for a lot of people the kind of director's Mount Rushmore, but, I'd be sort of hesitant maybe to put Carpenter maybe with that. I don't know, but I just feel that he doesn't probably get the credit he deserves for how good he was.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I've maybe saw him as too much of a titan actually, and might need to sort of look into talking to people about Big Trouble in Little China. I tried to talk to people at work about it to see if anyone had heard of it.
That's interesting.
No one had.
Well, there you go. Then Jack's onto something.
Exactly, he must be, because I kind of got a bit of a baffled look back because it's an odd title.
Yeah, and it's not the most popular John Carpenter film. Like, people would have probably seen or heard of Halloween.
Yeah,
or The Thing.
Yeah. If I'd gone around saying, "Have you seen Halloween?" They're like, "Yeah."
Yeah. and Halloween and Big Trouble in Little China are very different movies.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So obviously for lots of reasons. That's the kind of analysis you get. They're different films.
Next
film talk. No, it's It's not the most popular. I think it was one of the last of his kind of like beloved films that I saw.
Okay, yeah.
And I think I can remember there being a degree of reticence on my part way back whenever it was I watched it. But I can remember thinking, seems quite different to the films. Because, I like his kind of atmospheric horror movies.
Yeah.
Even the ones that do have a bit of a sense of humour to them, like The Fog.
Oh, yeah,
The Fog's great. Like, it's so good. But there's something a bit goofier about that.
Yeah, like they're pirates.
Yeah.
They've got maggots on their face, so they are horrifying.
Yeah.
But they're still sort of like supernatural pirates.
Yeah.
Sort of
and I was like, oh, yeah, this is fine. Although I think I might have seen The Fog after Big Trouble in Little China, actually thinking about it.
Oh, okay. That was one of my first ever John Carpenter films.
Oh, right,
Both
okay.
my parents have a real like love for The Fog, more so than even like The Thing, although they do love that as well. But I remember seeing it quite early days, and that's a creepy little movie.
It's just him all over.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, genuinely kind of scary, but goofy.
Yeah, really goofy.
Yeah.
They've all got sword, like sort of,
Yeah.
Love it. Yeah.
Then he's capable of doing like really kind of like muscular, sort of politically charged films, like Assault on Precinct 13, which also has probably my favourite soundtrack.
Oh,
score
okay.
of his,
Yeah.
Doom, dee-dee-dee-doom. Love it.
Do the whole song.
Listen. Great choice, Jack. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for making me watch it.
And
did not regret it. Yeah.
I'm probably right in saying a hidden gem.
Yep, agreed. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do think that is.
Good.
Classified. It's got the Cinebois
Stamp,
hidden gem seal of approval.
Yeah. Apparently, I did see John Carpenter was in an interview with Bong Joon-ho.
Really?
Yeah, which is awesome.
Oh,
and
nice.
he was saying he would consider coming back to directing if the opportunity came up, because he's been gone a while.
He has, yeah.
I'd be interested to see how a new film from him would work in this kind of landscape of revisionism.
Yeah.
And, kind of like, baseless nostalgia, it'd be interesting to see how, for someone like him, who's been kind of a bit of a maverick in that sense, would what kind of things, what's he going to do?
Yeah.
Is he going to go in on nostalgia and then make a mockery of it, or I don't know. I'd be interested to know to see what he does.
Same. I hope he does. I really do.
Because I can't see him deviating from his stylistic tendencies a huge amount.
Yeah, but how would that fit into the kind of modern way of filmmaking, like
I know,
digital and stuff?
And if we think about the idea of nostalgia, a lot of the way we perceive the 80s is down to the way that he shot his movies. He's one of the great pioneers of that sort of style. The kind of like the lighting and the flaring, that sort of lens flary kind of lighting. And
anamorphic lenses.
Exactly.
That was his thing, yeah.
Be interested to see.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, because it's been co-opted by, maybe that's the wrong word to use, but it has been aped by a lot of other filmmakers and distributed kind of... Yeah.
Well, I feel
broadly.
like that sort of trend is slowly dying now, the 80s thing.
Yeah, it'll come back, I'm sure. Although, in a different guise, maybe. Because, obviously, nostalgia for the 80s, as time goes on, will wane.
Of course, yeah.
As people fail to remember it as other people once did.
Cheers, John.
Cheers. God. What now?
Yeah, what now? Well, what now?
It's too early.
Well, now I hear you ask. Well, I have the second film, which is the Raid 2.
Yeah.
Drawn from the Le Creuset pot.
Mm-hmm.
It was a suggestion by Dale.
Yep.
And he filmed himself.
Did a little video.
Talking about the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just for something else.
Yeah. I really hope I've got the right one. No. So yeah, let's give him a watch.
All right, nice.
Shoot the breeze, and he's 1 minute and 41. So take note, Jack.
Yeah, 1 minute shorter. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, Cinebois Cinnamon. So you guys asked me why did I on Earth pick Oldboy and the Raid 2 as my little gem suggestions. Well, for me, it was kind of obvious that a lot of people don't know much about international cinema. Cinephiles might, and these are well-known international films then. But I think that it's shown that this kind of international cinema is appreciated when it's shown to the mainstream on Netflix and stuff like that. That's why Squid Games took off. I think the Raid and the Raid 2 would kick off if they had been shown off in the right places. And I think because of that, they're unknown and they're little gems to the normies out there, the kind of more casual cinema goer. And I think it's a real shame that these films aren't known, because you have things like John Wick, which it's an amazing film, but it has nothing on Oldboy and nothing on The Raid when it comes to like action cinema. And I think this would really work in these niches, and like the audience would love it. I think the sad thing is that like a lot of independent cinema or a lot of international cinema is just not seen in the right places. The tripe that we get shown every day, that we and forced to say that, oh, we should watch this, we should watch that, we should watch Iron Man. Oh, but really, there's a lot of golden stuff out there that the general population don't get to see.
I like the use of the term "little gems."
Little gems,
that's quite cute.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
Are they the sort of sweets?
They're midget gems.
Yeah, midget gems. Yeah, that's
no
right.
midget gems are the they're the really hard little gum sweets, aren't they?
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, midget. They're called what are they called?
Iced. Is it just iced gems?
Iced gems. You get the little biscuit with a little bit of icing on it.
Yeah.
I've had one of those in years.
So if Iron Man is like a hobnob, then the Raid 2 is a sort of little iced gem.
I think Iron Man's a custard cream.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't like custard creams.
No, I don't. I like Bourbons.
Yeah, custard creams remind me of this guy that I used to go to college with, and he was a lovely bloke. I really liked him, and I really hope he did. But he was obviously at this time of our lives as teenage boys where growing any facial hair was the sign that you were growing, and you were becoming more of a bloke. And I remember he sat outside my house once with me, not
Yeah.
and he on the curb and just ate a whole packet of custard creams. And like all the custard cream dust got stuck in this like horrifying sort of greasy, sparse sort of bum fluff. And from that moment onwards, I'll eat them, but every time I eat them, I go. I just remember that, and it really ruins it.
Oh, I love it. That's an amazing story.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. I really liked him. He's still alive, I think.
Yeah.
Past tense in the kind of sense that we haven't spoken in a while because of that.
Yeah. Because of the custard cream.
I was like, can you just fuck off get out of my house, get off my property. You're going to eat like that. Poor guy.
Mate, I kind of, I have an image of him just guzzling.
He gave me one as well. It was like a double stack pack, and he ate all of them. Fair play.
Nice. Yeah.
But little gems. I like that.
Yeah, same.
Maybe we should. This is the little gem. Interesting that he also included Oldboy. It's funny that in our correspondence beforehand, I think he did mention it, but I sort of forgot about that he mentioned Oldboy.
Okay. Well,
we kind of talked about it last week, so
we did actually.
Not to sort of disregard it, but I do think he's right in the sense that, as we said in the last episode, that it did sort of help. I'm sort of so hesitant to use the term reinvigorate, but it did kind of like bring a mainstream attention to Korean culture. We've kind of discussed that a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think the kind of comparison to John Wick is definitely apt.
Certainly in the case of The Raid, I think without the first two Raid movies, or certainly the first Raid movie, I wonder if you'd have got John Wick.
No, I doubt it. Yeah. I really would doubt it.
So it's a really good point, I think, that he's made there.
Just the sensibilities of both films in terms of the pacing, the kind of snappy editing, and the way that guns are used, and the way that guns are deployed, and the way that everyday objects are used as weapons briefly, and then they get tossed aside. Yeah, there's a definite comparison there. Yeah.
There's almost like a fascination with the artistry of action cinema that I don't think was as popular until films like The Raid came around. Certainly in the modern day. Obviously, you had filmmakers like John Woo, who did pioneered this sort of form of balletic gunishment. Obviously famously with Hardboiled, which I think is one of the greatest action films of all time. But then obviously he came over to the West and made films like Hard Target and Face Off. Both films I fucking love.
Travolta, Cage,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah, Van Damme in Hard Target.
Okay,
a film that's not given as much love. Maybe that could be a hidden gem.
Pop it in there. It's like, it's one of
mine.
Yeah,
I just got to write it 15 times.
Yeah.
Stick it in. I think this sort of, fascination with the finesse and artistry of action cinema was really kind of reinvigorated by The Raid. I think it was a really significant moment in action cinema. Not only did it shine a light on Indonesian martial arts, which had never really been done before.
Yeah, really interesting.
It kind of, I just think that kind of sense of, because I think a lot of older action films focus on a sense of scope more than finesse.
Yeah, definitely.
So when I think about Commando, there's obviously incredible artistry in the final sort of sequence. But, the sort of big gunfight at the end. But it's more about the scope, isn't it? And it fits into the idea of one man taking on an army.
Yeah.
One American man with American training, with American weapons. He is worth 1,000 of this sort of like second-rate, poverty-stricken nation's military. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It fits that kind of idea, and what we're talking again about in terms of Big Trouble in Little China, that idea of the American, macho, which
the individual,
the power of the individual. Whereas obviously the Raid does kind of lean into that a little bit, but there's more. There's a sort of it's not about the scope; it's about the kind of that kind of. I guess the sort of symbiotic relationship between the camera and the action illustrates that in a far more kind of meaningful and visceral manner.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is showcasing a martial art, and that is the primary focus of it. Really, the camera is there, and the camera is moving around it, but not in a way that's showing off.
No.
And it's sort of the camera is functional. It doesn't actually really add much because you're not going to concentrate on the camera work, are you? You're going to concentrate on this sort of amazing balletic, really violent, but really
my God.
The violence is almost beautiful. Like,
yeah.
It's just sort of like incredible. I can't
Didn't
remember
work for everyone. Didn't work for Roger Ebert.
Oh yeah, he hated it, didn't he?
He hated the first Raid film.
Yeah. It was like a 1-star.
I know.
He
Yeah.
kind of compared it to a video game, which is a bit weird.
But there's quite a lot of snobbery from film people about video games, particularly then.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's softened over the. It's funny, isn't it? It just seems to be like when any new medium comes along, everyone's like,
yeah.
oh. But then they kind of like tend to forget that film probably went through the same process,
Completely. Yeah. It was sort of lowbrow
by theatre
entertainment.
people.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
No, I think obviously the argument's a bit more nuanced than that, but I think it's interesting that people like Roger Ebert really didn't like it.
Yeah. I think it does. It speaks to a kind of narrow-mindedness, which I can understand. As
Some
a man
people
of his
action
age,
cinema, like it does have a bit of a. I guess it kind of has that. It'll always have that kind of awkward relationship with like being quite blokey.
Yeah.
Which I think the Raid isn't at all. Well, I don't know actually.
It kind of
thinking about it.
It is sort of like appealing to those sensibilities.
Thinking about
there's
it.
There's not a lot of female characters.
Don't cut this.
In the second, in the Raid 2, actually, there's like Hammer Girl.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
with the sort of sunglasses.
Yeah,
that you'd find in Next. I always think those sunglasses are like they're from Next.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally speaking,
worn by Jamie Redknapp's wife.
yeah, exactly.
I think they've split up actually. Hot off the press.
What? yeah. Anyway, there's not a great female presence. Although arguably this is like really threadbare kind of. I'm grasping at straws here, but the main character is ultimately fighting for the
to return to his wife.
Who is pregnant in the first one, and who, he's got a daughter, I think, in the second one. You never see them, I don't think.
Oh yeah.
It's a motivation, I suppose.
yeah. But I guess you could argue that's kind of their role in most action films. Isn't
it's relegated massively. But I mean, in terms of showcasing the martial art, I think it really succeeds. And
it's
a fantasy. Yeah.
I remember the first time I went to see it was when I lived in Devon, and we'd gone out the night before, and I was really hungover and really didn't want to go.
Oh, okay.
Because I was just like, I just want to stay in bed.
Yeah.
But I went and just, I think feeling a bit woozy, kind of, it kind of, I don't know, it made the experience it's so much more impactful.
Yeah.
And I remember coming out of the cinema and I was like so jazzed.
Yeah.
I was like, holy fuck. That was a fucking experience, man. And I just, I'd never seen anything like that for such a long time.
Yeah.
Since like watching Hardboiled for the first time, I was like, oh my God, like action films can be this.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I love like Commando. You know how much I love Commando.
Yes,
I bang on about it all the time. But it's a different kind of action movie experience.
Yeah.
And to see that kind of finesse and just how intricate everything feels, which is ironic given how chaotic they are.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of planned chaos though, because it's choreographed. kind of clearly choreographed. They don't make they don't attempt to hide that.
No.
In no real world scenario would this ever happen. I mean, like the guy climbs up.
You've not seen me in
guys.
Wetherspoons.
Yeah, well, apart from that, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's sort of, the way he sort of just effortlessly dispatches violence on like sort of 7 guys, just purely by swooping around them and like using a kind of piece of broken glass to stab them and then discard it because there's something, immediately there's something else on the horizon.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of overcranked camera feel as well, or maybe undercranked, so it's very fast. Yeah, so it's not, not even remotely realistic, although there's a foundation which is realistic, which is obviously this martial
art. The aesthetic is grubby.
Yeah.
And that kind of adds to that sense of, realism,
Yeah, prosumer camera sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's funny, he's often confused with Gareth Edwards.
Yeah.
Gareth Evans.
I think I did that a couple of episodes ago.
It's very common.
Yeah.
I've listened to a few podcasts about the raid, and all of them make that mistake.
Did they?
Yeah,
makes me feel a bit better about myself.
It's because basically, they're both called Gareth. They both have surnames that begin with E. They're both sort of, Gareth Evans is Welsh, Gareth Edwards is British, but they both started with like prosumer cameras, doing it on the cheap. Raid 1 was like very cheaply made.
And you can tell.
Oh yeah,
but not to the film's detriment. Yeah.
They've all got like airsoft helmets on.
Yeah.
It is, you very quickly settle into the rhythm of it and the sensibilities of it. Yeah.
The kind of like rough around the edges nature of the film gives it a kind of, I guess, a kind of like a sense of realism, which is strange given that you can kind of tell. But it also places the onus more on the kind of physicality and the fight sequences to give that. Do you know what I mean? And I think it just works for it. I love it. I think it's a great pick. Very fortunate with the picks we've had actually so far. But yeah, no, it's just a great one, and I love the sequel too. I remember you had some slight reservations about the sequel.
Yeah, I really, because it was only because of something I really enjoyed about the first one, which was its leanness. And basically you can watch it without subtitles, right? It's like Mr. Bean. It's got the worldwide appeal because the dialogue doesn't matter, because it's showcasing the martial art, and because it's all about the sort of physicality and the kind of, it's a kind of group of police officers, Indonesian sort of kind of covert SWAT team force. Kind of creeping into this building and getting annihilated, basically, is not really focused on exposition or dialogue or sort of even plot, really. I mean, the plot is incredibly basic, and I liked that for it because it allowed me to focus on the balletic nature of the martial art. The second one, I did still really enjoy it, don't get me wrong. And like the fight action sequences were there and they were brilliant and they were arguably better than the first. Putting more money behind a concept like this is clearly a good idea because because all of a sudden it's shot with a nice camera and there's like the cinematography is a lot more kind of considered as well. But there's like a crime family thing in it, which I didn't get. I didn't think it needed it. I would have been happy with the prison being the main setting and doing it all again. It sounds bad because I know, a lot of, common complaint of sequels is that, it's just a recycled concept from the first one. Kudos to Evans for going in a different direction and kind of staying true to what he loves about cinema, which clearly is plot, and he clearly wanted to have that for the first raid. For me, it just I had a tough time keeping up with the plot. It's not a difficult plot to follow, but
there's a lot of threads that don't necessarily. I think that you're right in the sense that it's a bit messier. But I kind of found it to work for me. I actually think I prefer the second one.
A lot of people,
and that's not to say that I don't think the first one was. I think it impacted me more in the sense that it came from nowhere. I mean, that'll always probably, for that reason, it will stay more in my mind as a result. But what I like so much about the Raid 2 is that there's something. It's a bit goofier. Like it kind of embraces it, and that's what I kind of think when I think about the expansive nature of the narrative, that kind of mythologizing, and that's a risky thing to do. Because, like you say, with a sequel, it's either you regurgitate or repeat what you've already done, or you go outwards and you you expand, which can also be a problem.
Yes.
And in this case, it is choppy. It's a bit all over the place, but
no raid. There's no raid in it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Shit. Distinct lack of raid.
Well done, Gareth Edwards.
Evans.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, I think there's something like Hammer Girl, Baseball Batman, or whatever they're called.
I think literally that's what they're called.
There's a kind of like silliness to it. That again, like, it's ultra violent, and obviously the themes are kind of a bit more kind of adult, I guess, in terms of like police corruption and and all that kind of stuff. It's obviously leaning very heavily into lots of other films to infer that, films like Eternal Affairs and all that kind of stuff.
Time. Yeah.
But it's like there's something about that kind of like just wacky mythologizing that really marries well with the kind of more expansive use of martial arts.
Yeah.
I know it really worked for me.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can completely understand why anyone would be like, what the fuck is going on?
I don't know, maybe...
Because it's not that it's complicated, it's just it's not very well...
Yeah, it's sort of...
articulated in the narrative, really.
Yeah, I mean, it just sort of... It goes from one thing to the next really fast, whereas the first one was like a linear...
Yeah.
Obviously, literally all that happens is he goes from the bottom of the tower to the top of the tower, dispensing his sort of like... I can't remember the name of the martial art, but it's
Silat. Is it?
Silat, yeah, that's it.
Penkak Silat or something like that.
I think that's it. Yeah, and he's sort of dispensing that along the way. I just think maybe because I watched them literally one night apart, I was expecting a continuation, whereas actually what I got was something like different. And it was and maybe I was sort of it caught me off guard a bit. I was I have to follow this.
Yeah,
what's going on? Like, who's this? Who's this? Like, what are they like? I've got to read the subtitles, which is fine. There's a Japanese family.
Yeah, the Accuser crime family. Yeah.
Okay, I've got to follow that. It's not an excuse for the, just to showcase more martial arts. Like it does, they kind of weave the fights in quite cleverly, I thought. There's always a reason for them to exist. There's a great bit on the train with Hammer Girl.
And it intercuts with the kind of like the festival.
Yeah.
So there's a few sort of flashes of something else going on there. Kind of, it's a bit confusing. Do you know what I mean? Like, like, oh, okay, this is happening now. Which is interesting. I guess it is kind of like, he's obviously being Welsh, he's not Indonesian, but I think his wife is.
His wife is, yeah.
Yeah, so
they actually live in Wales again.
Do they?
Yeah.
Following him closely.
Yeah. I Wikipedia'd him.
Oh, okay.
Especially for this podcast. So,
You're welcome.
Yeah, mate.
But I think obviously he's kind of immersed himself in that culture as much as an outsider can. And I think it's interesting to always see that, how that is represented.
Yeah.
But his crew is largely all Indonesian. His cast obviously all Indonesian, I think, and a lot of the when you watch like interviews, they the relationship they have is clearly a very close, very collaborative one, and I think there's a lot of respect there. It's not in any way exploitative, and I think
he's clearly just fascinated by
he loves it.
Art, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, if you follow him on Instagram, he's always posting that about action. But he's got a new one coming out with Tom Hardy.
Yeah, Havoc. It doesn't look great, but it might be amazing. Who
Could
knows?
be good.
Yeah.
I've seen bits of Gangs of London and thought that looked pretty good.
Oh yeah, he's like producing that one, isn't he?
Didn't he write and direct quite a lot of the first season? Maybe.
Yeah. I know he's like a showrunner.
This isn't TV boys to TV men. So, and it also opened the world up to Indonesian action cinema. Like Netflix published a couple. There was a film called The Night Comes for Us.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah.
And it had the main guy from the raid,
right? Yeah,
Iko Huwei, I think. I might be getting that wrong. Sorry, pal. And the chap who is the kind of commanding officer gets his neck broken.
Yeah, it looked a bit like Ron Perlman.
That's interesting. I didn't think that.
Only in the sense that he's got like the same.
Oh no! I know who you mean.
It's not him.
He's the corrupt cop. No,
he gets shot in the head, doesn't he?
Yeah. I'm thinking about the one that Rama really looks.
You must have been a bit confused by that.
I was like, that's a strange one. No, the one that Rama really looks up to.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, of
Yeah,
course. Yeah.
Who's also now Sub-Zero. No, yes, he is Sub-Zero in Mortal Kombat. So he's
really?
cool. Yeah.
There you go.
But yeah, like that is. I mean, it's so violent.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's more violent
Raid's
than the
pretty
Raid.
violent.
Yeah, it is.
Fuck
But
me,
like
some of the
and
like,
it is so indulgent in the kind of violence. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
just a lot of people having fun. But I'd recommend it. It's very good. I really liked it.
Yeah, I think the violence in the Raid was unexpected for me. I thought it was going to be more kicks and punches, but no, man. There's some stabbing in this.
Yeah.
Stabbing with various bits and
Breakages and
mate, like really goes all out. And it's actually weirdly made me think of that bit in Kingsman in the church, which everyone banged on about, and I was like, that is fucking 100% taken directly from the Raid and done poorly, actually.
Yeah, I completely agree. In comparison to the Raid, it's fucking shit.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit harsh. No, fuck it. I think it boils down to what Dale's saying about this idea, and I think what he's alluding to by mentioning John Wick is that these films, they help usher in a kind of stylistic sensibility or a kind of action cinema, John Wick films, or like those scenes in Kingsman, And for a lot of audiences, that's maybe all they're going to get. They're going to see that and go, "Wow, that's amazing." But it's like, obviously, not taking anything away from anyone involved in that, but the Raid does it far better. So just go and watch the Raid.
At the risk of sounding a bit like Tarantino. Yeah,
I
always think that, like, go and watch this one.
You could obviously and that kind of approach can ever come across like I'm under no illusions how sort of cretinously pathetic this. We sound and we go, well, you should probably just be watching this instead.
Yeah, no, but
he's
like,
got
a good point.
I think he does have a point, and I'm not saying that Dale's part of that cretinous patheticness.
No.
We're the ones with the podcast. It's a shame that for a lot of people, and I think Dale makes this point quite well, is that the only thing you're going to see is like scraps of it, flickers of it, because that's what Hollywood does. If it's not remaking foreign cinema directly, it's kind of like snatching the best bits that they perceive to be the best bits, and then sort of crudely stuffing them into their films,
trying to do it on the cheap as well,
cheaper.
Which is
it's interesting how that kind of like that system, the kind of way it's filtered to a mainstream audience goes. So I think in that sense he is right that it is kind of a hidden gem. Even though I kind of feel like it kind of exploded and a lot of people really liked it, I think the way in which kind of like Hollywood and the mainstream, certainly Western film industry takes these things, I can see his point. I was skeptical at first, but
he's won
me over.
But I can understand where.
In 1 minute and 41 seconds, he's won me over.
I agree where he's coming from. Yeah, like in the sense that I'm probably just going to repeat what you've said now, actually, but how you are, a lot of the kind of movie-going public in the Western world is going to think that it started in Kingsman. And Kingsman was the one that revolutionized it, but actually the influence of the Raid is the kind of underlying the underlying thing that actually
it kicked it all off.
And
certainly brought it back.
So in that sense, they're hidden. They're hidden behind a swathe of
mediocre Western movies.
That are just.
I'd never really got on with Kingsman anyway.
It's all right.
It's fine.
It's not hidden though, is it? It's not a hidden gem.
No, it's a little gem.
Yes, I love that.
No, it's not even that. I wouldn't say.
I didn't mind I watched the first one on a plane, and I was like, that was a good way to pass 2 hours.
Yeah,
and I watched it again later. I was like, I don't know, actually. Not as good as the Raid 2. The first Raid was called something. It was like the Raid, and then it actually had like a subtitle.
Raid Redemption.
That's it. Yeah. Which I thought was the sequel. I spent ages looking for that, and then I was like, well, I actually probably should watch this one again, just to kind of reacquaint myself with the franchise, and then I hadn't seen the second one. I'm glad I did. I do personally prefer the first one quite a bit more because of the scrappiness, because of the inventiveness.
Yeah.
that was replaced with a very nice looking sheen and excessively plotted for me.
Yeah, I can see that.
But none like get the hidden gem thing, and I'll be recommending it. I think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny. Hannah watched bits of all of these. She kept falling asleep during Big Trouble in Little China. I put it on while she was asleep, so she woke up and she was just like, "What's this?" I was like, "It's Big Trouble in Little China, directed by John Carpenter." And she was like, "Oh, all right," and then went back to sleep again. And then, kind of like what Jack was saying about, you go away and get a drink and come back and it's all changed.
It's such a different film every time.
She kept asking me what I was watching.
Yeah.
I was like, "You know what I'm watching, Big Trouble in Little China." She was like, "Oh, really? Yeah. Okay. What's this about?" Like,
I should get a divorce.
No. Yeah, I just kind of that bit just sort of popped into my head. I thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, that is a really good point about that film. Absolutely. Right.
Oh, here it is, Le Creuset.
Hang on a minute. I've put the films we've already drawn back in. We're not talking about it again.
Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah.
Oh, right. Go on. You pick the first one.
All right. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a hidden gem. I've not heard of this one.
Go on.
Woman of the Dunes.
Oh, good one.
By Jan. So thank you very much, Jan, for that.
Yeah, great film.
Okay, looking forward to seeing that.
Very good.
Let's put it back in. Yeah.
Wreck.
Oh my god. Okay.
Graham or Sling.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's. I've not seen that for a long old time.
Mate, I remember the ending to that with a thin zombie.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Look, that's good. If I'm going to rewatch a film, it needs to be a good couple of years.
Okay.
It's been a long time, even longer. So good. That's great. So
nice
we've got Woman of the
selection.
Dunes
And Wreck.
and
Yeah.
Wreck. Woman of the Dunes is great.
Okay, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's like an entomologist. That's an insect guy, isn't it? Is that an entomologist? Yeah, fuck it. At this juncture.
Yeah.
We've got socks on. Can you see? I really hope not, because I've got terrible feet. It's like, and some sort of like really kind of like sweaty, really intense, kind of like sort of sensuous, bizarre sort of love film.
Wow, okay.
Love film.
Love film. A film
I
about
love film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've explained that really poorly, but it's really, really great.
I mean, if anything, good, because it means I'll be surprised.
Yeah.
Hannah will be like, "What the fuck is this?" I'm going to sleep. Yeah.
It's writhing bodies covered in sand. And Wreck, Spanish zombie film.
Yeah, man, liked Wreck. Got a remake, didn't it? Quarantine, which was really bad. Like,
Well, it goes back to what we were saying, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Nice.
There we go.
Questing the cinematic void.
There we have it then.
Yep.
76.
In the bag.
It's happened.
In the toilet.
Yeah, really looking forward to the next Hidden Gems.
I don't know what I meant by that. A lot of faith in our content, clearly. Looking forward to those, as you were about to say, I assume. Really good to talk about those last two. I'm really looking forward to talking about the next two.
Yeah. Got a few films to watch first, though, haven't we?
Yeah, we've got a few films we're really looking forward to.
Yeah.
It's
going to be because April is better than March, but it's pretty slow in terms of output that we would normally watch, I would say. So we're going to be dedicated podcasters, and go and watch them anyway. You go ahead and reveal what we're going to about to
Alto
see.
Nights.
Yeah, the Alto Nights. Robert De Niro in yet another crime gangster movie.
Yep.
Playing a dual role, which might be interesting. It's had a bit of a troubled, checkered past, this film. I think it's taken a while to reach our screens. A lot of sort of revisionism going on in the background, which is never usually a good sign.
Nope.
Maybe they just spent a shitload of money on polishing turds. Or maybe they have created a diamond out of coal. Out
of shit?
Yes, out of literal shit. That
happens, right, if you cook it for long enough.
Yeah, I think so.
I literally have no interest, and I know that sounds bad, and I'm going to try and leave that at the door. going in.
Yeah, hopefully.
But this idea of just De Niro in another gangster movie, like it felt like The Irishman was a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like this is like about the death of the gangster movie, and almost like a kind of like send off for his kind of legacy as a gangster character.
Yeah.
Scorsese's gangster films, although you could argue that kind of Killers of the Flower Moon is sort of a gangster movie.
In a way. Yeah.
In a slight, not as overtly. I don't know. It just seems like a real misstep for me playing two gangsters. It's like, ooh,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, in the previous one, he was de-aged and like there was technology involved, and now it's like there's two of them. Yeah, I don't know. It might be amazing. I keep saying that, but like I don't think it is going to be.
The more you say that, the less enthusiastic we look.
No, I'm really ready to criticize it, but I'll be fair and I'll be, I will go in with an open mind.
If we just eat loads of M&Ms before we go in, maybe we'll be a bit more excited.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going to do.
I might do that actually. Yeah.
Just eat, not peanut ones for you, obviously.
Oh, thanks, mate. Yeah. Get the blue bag.
They're good ones, then.
Yeah, they're better.
If we eat like a pack of those each really quick and then have like a big pint of Coke.
Yeah, one of those massive.
Yeah. We'll just be like wired. Maybe then we'll enjoy it.
We'll go in and there'll be an audience of men in their 50s, which I think is what this film is going to give.
Definitely. Yeah. No disrespect.
No, yeah.
To anyone in their 50s.
No, men specifically. But if you're a woman and you're in your 50s, that's fine as well. Oh, Jesus.
No women listen to this.
No.
No women listen to this today. Come on.
If you're a woman and you listen to this, please email us.
Oh, God. In the meantime, thanks for getting through this episode. I had a lot of fun with this.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Dale and Jack.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And
Appreciate that.
we'll catch you in the next one.
See
Take
you
it
then.
easy.
Cheers. Bye-bye.